to use correctly because GYN uses a lot. For diagnostic purposes and for operative GYN cases. So we need to know what kind of fluids we use, normal saline versus glycine. In general, I was told that glycine used for monopolar electrical devices, and normal saline and lactated ringers is used usually for bipolar devices. So anyway, sometimes we use the cystoscope, which is very unusual for GYN cases, and then we have to use the glycine. So Chris gave me some information, very useful. So we have certain numbers, and I included in the quiz. So for glycine, it's 1,000 or 1,500. For saline, it's 2,500. Procedure should be stopped. We just pause and we say, okay, we have a fluid deficit over this and this, and we have to stop the procedure, and then anesthesia kicks in, and they might they know the baseline for especially for sodium, and they will draw the electrolyte, and I don't, it never happened, so I don't know how this works, but anyway, they have to define cardiac status, oxygenation, assessing electrolytes, etc. For 750, we pause, and we just pause, and then we do we equilibrate the entire system. I guess we turn off.
No,
we just let it run. Okay.
Catch up.
So that's the another quiz question, and so another question I have is definition of the fluid loss, and it's very important to know that it's a difference between instilled fluid, right? Instilled fluid, and the volume of fluid removed through the outflow channel of the hysteroscope, plus fluid collected from the drapes, which sometimes is a disaster, and the last fluid, which is on the floor and surrounding areas. So deficit closely represents the amount of fluid that may have been absorbed into patient's vasculature. So we have to consider drape or surrounding area, and how they call this?
Canisters.
Canisters. Yeah. So what else? That's pretty much all.
Good. All right. So what I would like to do is just first kind of break this apart. Start as like a setup of how you would just set the pump up in case it doesn't have any of the canisters on it, what these two devices mean, and then going to do the setup when it comes to the pump tubing and how to get the priming process and the equipment detection. So first, we've got the canisters. They're labeled so that this middle portion is always the vacuum. So wherever your suction is coming from, you always want it to be the last canister you're using in your tandem, which I would typically recommend doing at least 2. Your suction is going to go from, I guess that's your suction right there, will go into the middle, that says vacuum. Then you have a patient one, which is the other big nozzle that's off the middle, and that's going to be the tubing, one of these tubing, that's going to be coming from your patient. So you stick it on that, and then the small little guy is the tandem, so that's where these little tubes will be connected. So I'll just go ahead and tandem this real quick. We'll just do 2. And the only time that you'll ever see this used is typically the Hologic rep or Smith & Nephew rep, who's ever has a little shaver device. We'll put a sock in there for a collection of tissue. So you guys would never really have to mess with that. So right now this is the actual just pump itself, and then this is just the weight system that measures your deficit and then your inflow. This is very basic. You've got your preset pressure and your max flow. I would never really change these. Sorry. I wouldn't change these too much. Typically you're fine leaving it the same. this shows what your actual pressure reading is right there. That's going to fluctuate throughout the case. So we'll basically, the one thing right here, the setup for the fluid safe is right here with the canisters. It shows like, where you put the pump tubing and how to wrap it around. So if you ever are confused by this, which I'm about to show you, there's a diagram that's blown up right here. And then it even identifies what exactly these specific items are on the pump and compressor. So what I'd recommend, we're going to go ahead and set this up completely so you guys can see, is go ahead and put your bags on here. You know, if you think it's going to be a long case and they're definitely going to reset, I would just put all the bags up, put your glycine, put your saline up. So real quick, within the pack, you've got, let's see, this is the inflow portion. So obviously the spikes, it's going to be inflow. And then you've got this long, it's like a Y tubing, it's your outflow. So, basically, break this up. Show this looks like quick. Very simple. So this is what's going to go on the inflow portion of your hardware, similar to an arthroscopy pump. This puzzle piece is what you're going to wrap around that wheel. So you just break the plastic off of it, and you can see it's kind of an odd shape, but it fits right in here like so. And just make sure that it's flush with it, and then you can take it's like a stretchy band tubing, and just wrap it around the wheel, and make sure this plastic piece just fits right in to that, and it's snug. And you just pull it out. So that's all you really need to do with that. It's pretty simple. Go ahead and spike.
Pretend. Don't spike it. Because you won't need it for the next case.
Oh, okay. Pretend spike. So this is on the patient. Then you've got the outflow tubing. So let's see what the Y looks like. So here's your Y, right? So the short suction portion is going to be at the bottom of your bag of your patient. This is your outflow. So this is going to go on, there should be a diagram on the hardware that shows an arrow going in, which your inflow is going to be connected to, and an arrow going out, which your outflow is going to be connected to. So this will be right there. This will be under the bag. And then this long portion is what's going to come to the patient, which we'll put, this is open sticky right. And then this vacuum is where that suction is going to go into the vacuum portion. So we have patient, tandem, vacuum. So now, well, I mean, actually, I don't want to split this because, do you have a heart? Did you bring that set? No.
Go ahead, do it.
Nice. So we open it up. Do you have a bucket or anything? Can you use that little bit? I mean, because we want to.
There's a cake bucket right there. Here.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got everything open. Basically, what you're going to have in order to do the priming is you're going to have the scope in the sheath, like everything set up like you would do in the case. Close the outflow, because the outflow isn't going to be a part of this priming or equipment detection. Leave the inflow open. So you start the pump. And so I would just try to get as many of the bubbles out as possible. I mean, I wouldn't, it's not going to be perfect, but just majority of them. So we started the pump to prime it. Now, in order to go through the equipment detection so the pump knows the spacing it has to pump water through with the sheath and the scope, you stop the pump. And then in order to get into the equipment detection, you hold this stop in. until it beeps, like that, and then you let it go. And now it's going to be like a 12-second period where it goes through equipment detection process.
Yeah, and during this process, you want to just have the inflow open and the outflow closed. Like this, that's important, or it won't work.
Yeah, because you want it going through the sheath coming out the tip. So you heard the second beep. At the second beep, you don't touch this pump again. Just have them clamp it off on the field. And then you can see your deficit showing on 410. So that's when we want to zero this out. So we're to 0. And then you're ready to do the case. And typically by doing so, you're going to always have good flow. It's not going to be that bloody. I mean, it depends on the patient's like blood pressure as well. But 99% of the time you do that, the case will go smoothly. I would say the only other thing to keep in mind to help with the deficit is if you are having to put more bags on, the empty bags need to stay humped because that's part of the weight. So if you take those off, it's going to throw the weight off. The weight.
Yeah, so it's better to actually put more bags than you need because if you're trying to add more bags, it makes the machine go crazy.
It does, yeah. You'll notice like when you touch it, it goes into a bag mode. So that, I mean, you can still touch it in that scenario, but it's just a little sensitive. And so, you know, you can just don't try to touch it for like 5 to 10 seconds and then stop, let it get out of bag mode, and then go back to doing what you're doing. Typically is what you do, just to help keep like an accurate deficit. Good.
Good?
Yeah.